on. It's preparing to live stream. It's still preparing to live stream. I see all positive signs. And yes, we are live streaming. Bear with me one moment. Okay, we are live streaming, and let me unpause the recording.
Good morning, everyone. That was very much a, what do they call that? A meta moment. Keith was streaming on his phone while we were being recorded. But anyway, I want to welcome you all to the MAPC Executive Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Again, this meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom video conference. Consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this includes an extension until March 31st, 2025 of the remote meeting provisions of former Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, which suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. If you share your screen, we can see you. And to provide public access to the meeting while limiting the potential for abuse of video technology, members of the public may view the proceeding at www.youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. And with that, I call the meeting to order at 11:34. At this time, I'm going to do roll call. If everyone could come off mute, please, for the moment. We'll try and do this as painless as possible. All right, here we go. Imai? Colette?
Present.
Kurt?
Present.
Keith?
Present.
Karen?
Present.
Jen? Tom? Daniel?
Here.
John DePriest?
Here.
John Featherston?
Here.
Tom G? Mo?
Here.
Sagoon?
Oh my gosh.
Tabor?
Here.
Robert? King? Angie?
Here.
Gina? Steve O?
Here.
Vandana?
Present.
Claire?
Here.
Sam?
Here.
Steve S?
Present.
Juan? Elaine?
Here.
And Erin here. And if you joined after I read your name alphabetically, if you could just pop your name in the chat, like Imai did. Thank you, Imai. Just so we can capture that for the minutes. Great. All right, next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from December 18th, 2024. Are there questions or comments on that, on those minutes?
I just had one comment, Erin. It doesn't state the location, and I think it was an in-person meeting. Is that right?
Was with excellent food and excellent, even better company. So if it's okay with you, if there is a motion to put this on the consent agenda with the addition of the location, I will take that at this time.
So
Wellsy moves. Oh, I'll move and you can second, Mo.
I'll second.
Awesome. So motion made by Colette to put this on the consent agenda and the second made by Mo. Thank you so much. Okay, next up is the treasurer's report for Treasurer Sam.
Thank
Sam,
you,
take it away.
President Aaron, and hello to everybody. Sam Seidel, Treasurer. Today we're going to look at the November 2024 income statement, which you all received in your packet yesterday, I think. And a couple of numbers really pop out. We won't first talk about the overhead rate, though that ultimately is the big number. We're going to look at direct labor, the direct labor line, and we're going to look both at the month, which is November, at 81%, and at the year to date, if you go further over to the right, which is at 86%. Those numbers are low, and they basically tell the story of the overhead rate. So if we go down now down to the bottom of the page and we look at the actual overhead rate for November, which is that almost bottom line, you see the percentage is 153.6%, and that is very high. And it's very much above our approved overhead rate of 124%. It's not quite as bad for the year to date. At the year to date, it's at 138.5%, but that still is high. I know from talking to Anna that staff are aware of this. The basic story is we just got to get more people billing to projects. And there are a couple of versions of why that's not happening. One is maybe in some ways the simplest one, the most benign one is there more FMLA was taken than really was budgeted for, was expected. Another factor is that staff at MAPC really need to focus on billing to their projects and not just saying, well, I can throw this on the admin expense. It really has to go to the project. There is lots of work at MAPC and there's lots of money to back up that work, but we won't record that money until we actually do the work, send out the bill, get the money paid in, and then it becomes revenue, and that's what we want. And the final reason is a reason you've heard many times, which is that there were just a lot of vacant positions at MAPC in the direct labor pool, people who would be billing to projects. But if they're not on staff, they can't do the work, they can't bill to the project. Those positions are getting filled, and we feel much more confident about that now. But even still, when there's a new employee, it takes them longer to kind of get up to speed, be able to bill to the actual client. And so some of their time will go to, some more of their time than what we would like would go to admin. The Finance Committee will be looking at all of this when we look at the mid-year budget, which is currently in process right now. And we were going to do that in February. We've got a couple of meetings on the schedule for February. So people are aware of this. We are looking at this, and we will be addressing this in the mid-year budget. Other than that, the agency is strong and healthy. There is plenty of work and plenty of support for that work. So that's really not the issue. It's just getting people on task and doing it. But I know people are working on that. That concludes the treasurer's report. Thank you.
Sam, I see a question from Imai. Imai?
Thanks, Erin. Kind of question to Mark and Lizzie. It seems like we're going to have kind of competing interests here. I know going through, the effort to unionize, one of the biggest things was always project reporting, code reporting. And it seems like that's one of the answers here to this overhead rate issue. And I don't know the answer to resolving the two. I wonder what your ideas are. I wonder if we, maybe need to start brainstorming how to put the two together.
Could we, Anna, remove the statement so that we can see each other on the screen better? Thank you. Very good. Okay. Lizzie, do you want to start some comments on that, or, oh, sorry, catch you mid-sneeze there.
I was just about to go off camera for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I'll take it for a little while then, and see if you have anything to add at the end. Imai, that's right. I look at it from two perspectives. One is the most important work this agency does is the work that we do for our members and the work that we do on projects. And people have to understand that, and they need to spend time charging to those projects. And if they were working at any consulting firm or law firm, it would be far more challenging, far more difficult than it is here. But that's how everyone gets paid. I often say if we didn't really run a consulting agency here, there would be 40 people and plenty of space for chairs and desks. But we provide direct services to our members, and people have to charge. We are doing a lot of work to try and make the charging process both more transparent and less onerous. But that is separate from the question of how much time people need to spend billing to projects. And that is probably not going to change tremendously in the near future. We can have fewer codes. We can try and put a variety of improvements through the Deltek system to make that process easier. We can let more people see the billing process so that they can resolve issues sooner. But at the end of the day, projects is most of our work, and charging to projects and recognizing the revenue after we complete the work is the way we discipline ourselves
Okay.
in terms of our both our financial resources, but also it's the way we discipline ourselves on the importance of actually getting the work done. So it's a balancing act that we're working on, and we will continue to work on. The numbers in November were much too high. And honestly, November concerns me more than the year to date at the moment. Now, one of the reasons for that Sam did not mention is November is the month with the most holidays. It's I see Steve is looking up and wondering, what are those holidays? So, well, there's Veterans Day, there's Thanksgiving Day, and then you know that we added the benefit of having a day after Thanksgiving. I still think that was a good decision. That's part of our overall improvement of benefits, which helps us to attract and retain exceptional staff. But every November we pay for that because we have more holidays than we do any other month. I'm hoping November is going to be better. I think it will be because we finish using DLTA funds in December, and that means everyone has to be focused on completing those projects, or at least a portion of those projects assigned to the calendar year. But Lizzie and Anna and I and individual directors are already engaged in on multiple fronts to bring the overhead rate down through specific actions on both the project side and the overhead side of that equation, or of that fraction.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, I recognize the challenge for sure. And I appreciate you sharing where it's at.
I think the only other thing I just would add here is that, I think, and we've had a lot of conversations around this table about sort of how we have more communication and transparency with our staff and talk to them about sort of how we are spending our overhead dollars and investing them back in the team. And I think even, thinking about like kind of to what Mark's point about like why we're all here and what it is that we're doing and like who we serve, the communities that we serve. And so we are also moving ahead with some more of those conversations just to try to open up some of those channels of communication with our staff to help connect some of those dots. Because I also think that there's like a push to try to make some more of these investments and to make them very, very quickly without necessarily understanding the impact that will actually have on our budget and on our work and sort of how we're spending our time. So Mark and I are doing, there's like a lot of different things in place to try to open up those channels of communication with our staff.
Sorry,
Angie?
Aaron, do you want to do it? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll do it. Angie?
Sorry. I had similar questions and comments as Imai. I know during second part of last year when we were talking about the strategic plan and also the DEI plan, the topic of billing, came up again and again, and I think it was like one of the recommendations or priorities. So I had similar questions as Imai as to, it seems like competing interests that you have to balance. On the one hand, I totally understand, like a lot of these contracts, you only get paid for what you bill, much like a private consultant or a lawyer. On the other hand, especially for bring in younger and more diverse staff, how to make sure that there is a pipeline of staff and as well as staff retention. I think that so just wondering, how you balance that. Because one of the questions that I had was, this came up at one of those strategic planning or DI plan discussions, which is, let's say if, if someone was asking or being being asked to mentor somebody else, right? Like where does that billing go to? Like, does that type of work get counted as work that's billable or not? Or is that just kind of like overhead or admin? That was a question that I had.
Yeah, Mark, I'm glad to kick us off.
Please.
So just a couple of things I think in response to this, Angie. So alongside of our strategic planning work, our consultants have actually taken an initial step to better understand what staff challenges have around billing and codes and sort of how we actually account and track our time. And they have come up with a 26-page memo, which includes some recommendations, some of which I think are actionable, most of which I think are going to require like a whole other set of conversations. Some of that is about like how we account for our time and how we do business. And some of it is also about like, like we're a relatively scrappy government entity, and that means like everyone needs to like do paperwork and order food. Like we don't have a whole team of staff here who do that, and that is like something that kind of came up in that conversation a little bit nominally, but it's there. And so I think it will like kick off a conversation about how we track our time. And my guess is, because that is so related to how we also like, our requirements under the law, like our federal audit and like our state audit, that it's not going to be like an instantaneous like thing for our staff. But I'm hoping that, again, this is like one of the other conversations we can open up with them to talk about this and like think about ways to make it easier. To your specific question about like, is there a code for people to charge their time if they're in a mentoring role or relationship with staff? The answer is yes. But, Mark, and it's like, it is a very rare time that staff come to us with an idea that is like a good idea that we're like, yeah, there's just no real way to make this. It's very rare that we're like, there's no way to make this work. We almost always say like, yep, we can find you a code. We can find you time. We can shuffle things around. People are not asking as much. And so they are maybe making an assumption about how they should bill their time, or that they don't have time, or that there aren't dollars available. And so that is part of that. It's like connected to Imai's question and my answer there about like how we're increasing communication and transparency, because I think there's a nexus. Like part of it is actually letting our staff know we will always find dollars and time for you to be in a mentoring or educational space with your colleagues and in our communities. But there's like a bit of a disconnect, I think, at the moment on that piece.
Thank you. Steve.
So I have some questions on the very first line, assessment. Is that the number that we're going to be discussing later in the meeting? And if it is, doesn't that come in all at once when the state does the cherry sheets and gives you the money, or do we get it town by town whenever they send it in?
That comes in all at once, but we only recognize it when we use it.
Okay.
Just like any other money. We only recognize when we use it.
So how do you segregate it out that it's actually used for? How do you allocate to what you're using it for?
We have an assessment budget with about 50 lines on it. I'd say a good portion of it goes to what we call departmental and divisional assessment, which is an allocation of assessment dollars to each department or division. Almost every department or division gets some assessment, but it varies depending on their needs, depending on, for example, if a department gets huge amounts of money from the Bar Foundation, they don't need as much assessment. If a department is entirely dependent upon 100 individual contracts with cities and towns, they need more assessment because they need to apply for those. So that's a big piece of it, what we call departmental and divisional assessment. We also have what we call special assessment, which Eric Hove oversees, which is about 6 different categories where staff can specifically go to do things that they can't easily charge to projects. Building relationships with municipalities or community-based organizations, team building activities, researching a problem that they found here in Massachusetts and they'd like to see how they dealt with it in Florida and Minnesota, and other things like that. That's what we call special assessment. And then lastly, we have assessment assigned to individual projects or activities. For example, municipal collaboration and legal are doing some work on minority and women-owned businesses and hiring and procurement. And that has a special assessment or a specific assessment line item. So that is a process we go through usually in June and July, so that either by the beginning of the fiscal year or the very early in the fiscal year, we have that complete assessment budget, and every one of those lines has a code.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to add to the assessment. We also use funds from the assessment to do matches that are required by certain funders.
Yep.
That's an important piece of it.
It is.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you all who asked questions. Is there any other questions before I ask for a motion to put this on the consent agenda? And this is just the treasurer's report. We will talk assessment in 2 agenda items. Okay, great. Could I have a motion then to put this on the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, John DePriest. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sam. Don't keep me waiting, everyone. Okay, motion made by John DePriest, second made by Sam Seidel to put that on the consent agenda. We will vote on the consent agenda at the end of the meeting. Okay, next up, executive report.
It's me this time.
Mark is doing it this month.
Well, it's me, but it's really neither of us, because we decided there's no written report because we had an executive committee meeting late in December, and then there were the holidays. So it seemed like it would be a little thin for 1 month. So I'm going to mention really just one thing that came over about a week ago, which I think is very important, which is that the Transportation Department and the MBTA and CTPS have once again successfully worked on another major federal grant, this time charging and fueling infrastructure. We basically wrote the grant. MBTA was the applicant. This will result, if I can bring it up here, in it's a grant for $14.4 million. It will result in the installation of 458 public level 2 charging ports and 14 level 3 charging ports at 30 locations across the Commonwealth. Chargers will also be installed at the state's park and ride properties and at MBTA station parking lots. So again, great kudos to our transportation team and our clean energy team for enormous success in bringing federal grant dollars to the region, sometimes directly and sometimes through our partners, in this case, the MBTA. We are, both polishing our legal work and keeping our fingers crossed and saying a prayer that all of these grants do not simply get suspended on the 20th of January. And we don't know. We have no idea what's going to happen. But we will continue to do our best, and it doesn't limit the pride that I have in our staff's tremendous abilities to access these dollars.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Great. Yes, clap for those departments for sure. Okay, next up is the report of the Legislative Committee. I'm going to call on Legislative Chair Keith to start us off.
Thanks very much, Erin, and hello all. The Legislative Committee met last week and had a discussion with with Mark and the team about an increase and seeking an increase in the base municipal assessment for MBTA communities, and we'll have some specific information on that. We did vote that this is something the executive committee should look into, and I see that in Mark's memo you have a specific proposal for an increase to 75 cents per capita in fiscal 2027. That would be an increase of about 23% from the projected fiscal 26 rate, which is 60.9 cents. And the last time we did this increase was back in 2014. We're otherwise limited to an increase of 2.5% per year. And I think the excellent memo that Mark and staff put together make a strong case for seeking this legislative change, especially in a year when we really have to question whether some of the revenues we've relied on, particularly from the federal government, will be available to do the work we want to do. So with that introduction, I'll call on Leah.
I think Mark is going to kick us off, actually. Looks like he's
Okay,
on
very
mute.
good. Great. Thanks so much.
It being a once a decade activity, I'm going to kick it off, I guess. It is certainly the last time I'm going to ask you for this. We, I think, are in a unique situation among agencies around the Commonwealth, both with the structure of our board and also the slightly unusual way in which the assessment is determined. We are one of only two regional, on the one hand, we are one of only two regional planning agencies in Massachusetts that have a mandatory assessment that is on the cherry sheet that is paid to us by DOR every year. Most of the other regional planning agencies have to go to individual cities and towns and, if you will pardon me, essentially beg for their assessment payments. And the result is that they get very small assessment payments compared to what we and Old Colony Planning Commission receive. On the other hand, the way in which we set that assessment is very narrowly prescribed in the law. We are allowed to go to the council on an annual basis and seek a 2/3 vote to increase the assessment by an amount no greater than 2.5%. That comes to us not from our statute, but from Prop 2.5. And we don't have any of the other safety valves that individual municipalities have. You know, there is new growth in the region, but none of that is applied to our assessment. We can't do an override. We can't do a debt exclusion. We can only do up to 2.5%. And if in a given year we say we're not going to do the 2.5%, as we've done twice in the last decade, then that lasts forever. You can't come back the next year and say, oh, well, we want 5 this year. It's only 2.5. So if you don't go up, you never go up. The way this was established in statute initially was long ago, 60 years ago, 40 years ago, whenever the system was established, which was a little bit after the agency was established. It was set at 15 cents per capita. And we did 2.5% increases, and over the years, we got to 32 cents per capita. We never asked for a change in the base assessment until 2014. 2014, we went to the legislature, we asked them to increase the base assessment from what was then effectively 32 cents to 50 cents. And we have done 2.5% increases, as I've said, I think for 8 of the last 10 years, and we have gotten to 59.5 cents per capita. And now we feel that number, the fact that that number does not keep up with inflation is beginning to come back and bite us. I put payroll numbers into the chart or into the memo. You saw those. Our payroll has increased substantially, as has the payroll of many cities and towns over the last several years since COVID. There are 2 main reasons for that. The first reason is the staff has grown to provide more services to our members. When I arrived here in 2002, there were 30 people. We were probably at 60 or 80 in 2014 when we last increased the assessment. We are now at 120. That does not include interns. It also includes vacancies. So we don't actually have 120 people in the office, but that's the total number of staff positions at the moment. The second reason is we have increased salaries. And I make no apologies for increasing salaries because we need to do that in order to attract and retain exceptional talent. And that's what we look for at this agency. We don't look for good people. We look for incredible people. And we expect them to work incredibly. And we hope to retain them for more than 2 or 3 years. And you all know that in the current market, that means you pay people more. And, you know, we have, in addition to our HR team, we have a professional personnel consultant, HR consultant, who helps us doing comps and figuring out what our municipalities paying, what our state agencies paying, what our other regional planning agencies paying, what our consulting firms paying, and we use that to set the salary ranges that we place in our job postings. But that has moved at a rate considerably beyond 2.5% a year. And in addition to that, this is not reflected in payroll, or it's not reflected in wages, in the wage number that's in the memo, but we have also improved our benefits for exactly the same reason. And that also costs money. So we feel it is worthwhile after a decade to seek one more increase. And the increase we are looking for, which would not go into effect until FY27, so it's still a good piece away from now, would be to move us to a new base of 75 cents per capita and then 2.5 over that as we go. We would not apply the 2.5% increase in the year that we get the increase to 75 cents. That would be one of the years we skip the 2.5%, as we did back in 2014, 2015. I don't remember exactly what the fiscal year was. The process politically is a little bit, how shall I put it, informal. We're not going to file a bill. We are going to try and get an amendment to the state budget. This was what we did in 2014. It's where we think we have the greatest chance of getting the legislature's support and, critically, not having it as a bargainable issue in conference. Can't guarantee that, but our hope is to get both the Senate and the House to put it in. And then we expect that if that happens, we're already having conversations. We are hopeful, not certain, but hopeful that the governor will sign it or will not veto it. The process also includes one other unusual thing, which is if we want to get to 75, honestly, we may have to start at 80 or we may have to start at 85. And the motion which we are placing before you honestly gives us that flexibility. The commitment that I am making to you, however, and that our staff is making to you, is that when we eventually, after the legislation passes, if it passes, and we go to the council for approval, which requires a 2/3 vote of the council, we will do so at 75 cents. Even if it comes out at a number that's higher than that, we will only ask for 75 cents for fiscal 27. And that is the way we hope to both give you some assurance about the rate and to give us the flexibility to participate in the give and take of the legislative process, which, as you know, is sometimes a little bizarre. So our hope is that you will be supportive of this. For most cities and towns, it is a pretty de minimis amount of money. For a couple of cities and towns, particularly Cambridge and Boston, it is not a small amount of money, and we will have specific conversations. I know that they are not on the screen today, but we will have specific conversations. I've already set a date to have the conversation with the city of Boston, and I will do so with the city manager in Cambridge as well. I think I will also probably have a personal conversation with Mayor Nicholson in Lynn, which is our 3rd largest city and poorer than the other 2. We don't take this lightly. Every dollar is important to cities and towns, but you are all asking us to do more, and we want to be able to do more, and we want to do it at the same high level of effectiveness and efficiency that we have in the past. So that is why we are, after 10 years, coming to you with this request. Glad to see if Lizzie or Leah has anything to add, and then Erin, we can go for questions and discussion.
The one thing I'll add is that the population numbers that this is all based on come out of DOR. It's not something that we create, so that's how the formula is sort of built. It's the number that is set by statute and through the 2.5%, and then the population number that comes from DOR. And then also in terms of process, because we get a lot of process questions, it comes, as Mark mentioned, through the cherry sheet, which means that there's no local vote that would come. So it wouldn't go to town meeting or a city council. The vote would be at MAPC's council to approve. I think those were the clarifying points that I wanted to raise.
Right. That's actually what I was going to ask, if someone could just kind of talk through, like, you know, not just the equation, but like where the numbers came from, how we multiply, stuff like that. So great, thank you. Tabor, you're up.
So I was I guess I was in Sam's spot when this was passed 10 years ago. And as I recall, we were very concerned and very nervous because it had never been done before. And I think we kind of backed into it at the time by saying this 2.5% isn't fair to the cities and towns, and the cities and towns have overrides, and this is our override. We have fallen way behind, and that's how we got into this, and we need to true up with the economy. And I think rather than going in and I've forgotten exactly what the number was, but the initial introduction here was X% increase. And I think that's the wrong sales pitch. I think that feels like a lot of money. I think this is how far behind we are, because we've only been doing it 2.5%, yet our salaries and our rent and et cetera, have gone up tremendously, and we have not been able to keep up. The only way we can do business now is by skimping on serving you, the towns and cities that we serve. And that's not fair. We shouldn't be doing that, and we shouldn't be doing that to your citizens. And I just think I agree with the amount, and I agree with what needs to be done. I just think it's very important to craft the right sales pitch so that everybody feels like, of course, this is the obvious answer, instead of, all right, we'll pony up a little more money for you guys. And you know, it shouldn't be grudging. It should be fixing a problem. That's all.
Thank you for that, Tabor. It's really great to hear, and it feels good for us to kind of understand where you feel like there's a compelling strategy with our communities. And I think, we, in bringing this conversation to this committee, we need to kind of have the conversation and a little bit of the vetting, but I think some of the advocacy strategy, which, kind of to Leia's point, is on two fronts. There's an advocacy and education strategy with our communities, and then also inside the State House. And sometimes those have slightly different, though overlapping, messages. And so it's really helpful to hear that perspective, because I think we will probably use it in both instances.
Okay. Imai?
Thanks. First of all, great points, Tabor. I definitely agree with you. I would, one of the things you said, Mark, is, the agency is being asked to do more work, and I agree with that. I believe that's definitely true. One thing I didn't see in the memo is like kind of examples of that increased workload. And I think that would help, as we distribute this, as I give this to the town manager, to cite that as well, how the agency's role and services have expanded to, also help sell that increase.
I think that's an excellent point, Imai. Mark and I were talking, we were both here late last night talking a little bit about this, and sort of some of that messaging and like arguments here is sort of how much the agency has grown, even with relatively little growth in what we've brought in an assessment side. And I think, giving some examples of illustrative projects that we could not do, or that we might have had to turn away because we just don't have enough dollars or staff capacity is a really great strategy and kind of communications point for us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, storytelling is always like the foundation of advocacy. So, John.
Mark, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but probably a decade ago, you and I had to go in front of then the Framingham Select Board because they wanted to get rid of the Metro West Regional Collaborative. Do you see this type of conversation coming up again with maybe some larger cities and towns that they question, like where their money is going to go to and stuff?
I can vamp while Mark is chewing. I think so part of the strategy that we have, John, is to actually do some of these one-on-one conversations like Mark was talking about with some of our bigger communities, and honestly, kind of vetting and getting a sense of where some of our communities might be, but having some of those sit-down conversations with our cities and towns. I feel like we are in a good place with all of our communities, and just with the like vast array of work that we've done across the entire region over the course of the past I've been here almost 10 years. But even in the last 3 to 5, I feel like we are in a really good place with our communities, but we will be doing some of those sit down conversations to try to get a sense of what questions and concerns communities might have at the outset. I will also just note our sub-regional program itself is really strong right now. Our sub-regional program manager, Sasha Prodi, who's come and talked to this group a handful of times, has really deepened our sub-regional relationships. And so we're actually counting on that as part of our advocacy strategy to actually go through the sub-regions and actually start talking about this at the local level. Mark, did I give you enough time?
Yes, you gave me enough time, but you also answered the question.
I think that's great.
Sometimes, John, people say, may you outlive your enemies. So,
well,
there is no more Framingham Board of Selectmen, but
there you go. Yeah. So we won.
There is a Framingham City Council, of course.
Right.
And I think that we will dig deep to try and meet with any individuals or groups who might be concerned. Last time around, when this ended up going to council, we had 2 no votes. I think actually one was an abstention. And that was pretty good. It's really hard to get 100%.
Right.
But I think people will be, one of the really good things, and this relates to our project discussion and our charging discussion the other day, or a few minutes ago, is that there's hardly a community we haven't done work for.
Right.
And usually that's how they recognize our value. I mean, we often think, and I know this executive committee often thinks, that our greatest value is all the policy work, all the advocacy on Beacon Hill, the work we do with the federal delegation, the research reports, the data. But, to the town manager in Wenham, it's whether or not we did a project with Wenham.
Right.
And we will use that in pressing our case.
I think it's a good strategy. So thank you.
I'll also just add, if you think that I should add your community or another community to an early conversation list, please let me know. We are deep in scheduling those conversations right now, in hopes of a conversation today, and also just generally trying to keep good relationships with the municipal leaders. So if ever you hear that there is a relationship that needs shoring up, definitely give me a call, or obviously Mark and Lizzie.
Mo.
Thank you. And I apologize. I had to step out twice because we've got this construction emergency here. Are we taking a vote on this to recommend it today? What's our process here?
That's the goal.
It's a goal. Okay. So there will be communication with the leadership in our towns. For example, I represent Needham, but I'm not in a leadership position anymore. So
yes. So yeah, let me just clarify a little more directly. So we are hoping to get a vote to move ahead with this effort today by this body. That kind of gives us the room to kick off the legislative process and start having those conversations with legislators, and, like to Mark's point, get a sense of like where we should go in and a little bit of the strategy. We have started, we have great legislative relationships. So we have started a little bit, like laying some of the groundwork, but this would give us the opportunity to kind of really ramp up our advocacy. There will be a separate strategy, advocacy strategy for our cities and towns, which there'll be communications, there'll be information. And again, that would all be leading up to a vote that would happen after the legislature would act. So it would probably actually not be until the fall, if we get a positive outcome on the budget, which is our most likely strategy, that we would bring this to the council in the fall. And so that timeline is a little different, but bringing it to you is our first step in kicking off like sort of the full advocacy effort that we would be undertaking.
So I support this personally. The question is, what will the motion be that we're going to be approving or not approving. I assume we'll
Well,
approve.
everybody serves on this committee as an individual,
Right.
Right.
except arguably for the ex officios.
All right. So the
So
question I just
Mo
asked.
is voting what Mo wants.
I understand, but I just want to understand what I'm going to be voting on. That's all.
Yep, it would be voting on a motion to essentially recommend that we move ahead with an assessment increase campaign.
Okay.
It's not a vote to increase the assessment.
Exactly. That is not your vote. You do not hold that vote to actually increase the assessment. It's allowing the team and Mark and I to move ahead with a full campaign to work to increase the assessment, ideally by using the budget process.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. I can support that.
Great. We have one.
And well,
I think you have a few more than one, but not count it before it hatches. Thank you, Mo. Great questions. Colette,
I
question?
just had one suggestion for a data point that you might want to put in here. It might be in the memo. I'm trying to glance through it. I'm not sure I see it, but it might be helpful to say that this increase would have annualized out as X% increase over the past 10 years so that you can compare that with, you're saying that each town has Prop 2.5 and the average annual growth is 2% per town. So it seems like annually the towns are having about 4.5% growth.
Yeah.
What is this annualized? Does it compare roughly to that? I think that would be helpful to see.
Okay.
And then obviously you can compare it with inflation, but that was one suggestion. That's my only-
Appreciate that. We've been talking through some of that math on our end, and again, I think in some of our advocacy audiences that is more compelling than others. But I think that for a lot of our communities, it's appreciated.
And Mo, you don't have any other outstanding questions, right? Okay. Can
Your
you
hand is still
calm
up.
down?
oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It's hard. It kind of blends in with your background a little bit. Okay. Is there any, with the blur, is there any other questions at this time? Amazing. So what I'm going to ask, if there is a motion to, how do you want to wordsmith this, that we allow MAPC to move forward with its advocacy process in moving forward toward an increased assessment. Would that work?
To make it a little bit, I think somewhat fewer words, Erin, if I may.
Please.
Just that the executive committee recommends that MAPC staff work with the legislature and the governor and our council members to increase the base assessment for MAPC.
I don't think that was less words, but that was definitely more.
Probably not.
So moved.
Thank you, Imai. So Imai made that motion. Is there a second? Great. Karen made that second. And because it is, I'm looking for my attendance here. We're going to vote at this time since there are no questions before us and there's a motion in front of us. So if everyone could come off mute, and if you are abstaining, that's okay too. Please say it loudly because Emma is capturing the minutes and I want to make sure I'm clear on the votes for the minutes. Great. Thank you so much. All right, here we go. Imai.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Keith.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Tom D.
Aye.
John DePriest.
Aye.
John F.
Aye.
Tom G.
Aye.
Mo.
Aye.
Sagoon. Tabor.
Aye.
Robert, I don't know if your mic is still working.
Aye.
Oh, it is. Perfect. Thank you. Angie.
Aye.
Gina. Steve O.
Aye.
Vandana.
Abstain.
Claire.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Steve S.
Aye.
Juan. Elaine.
Abstain.
And Erin. Aye. So the motion passes with Vandana and Elaine abstaining. Did I get that right, everyone? Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to staff you know, the officers were updated on this item a week and a half ago, and I can't even imagine how many hours you have logged in conversation talking through this assessment item.
We're just
I
at the
think you
beginning,
probably
so
get
we're
it.
like, the road is ahead.
Yeah, so
You
thank
all
you
very
all
much.
for really, really working on this.
I recognize that this is a vote of confidence in our work, and I and all the staff appreciate it tremendously.
Well, we all wish you luck in the road ahead, and please let us know where we can be the most helpful. And I will ask the executive committee members to please connect with Lizzie, Mark, or Leah. If you identify your community or your, you know, who you represent, needing an additional conversation or additional information through this process. Great, thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda is preparing for the February Executive Committee meeting.
So this is fairly straightforward. I just want you to know that the February Executive Committee meeting, which will be in person, barring inclement weather, is going to be a big one because we will be approving the mid-year budget for FY25, and we will be asking you to approve the strategic plan, or to recommend that the strategic plan be adopted by council at its virtual meeting on the 5th of March. So please pencil in the 26th of February. The meeting is a little late because of the school vacation. Pencil in a little travel time too, so that you will be able to join us. I expect this meeting will last to 1 o'clock. It might even last to 1:30 because we have these two important items. We will be getting you the mid-year budget as soon as the Finance Committee meets, about a month from now, I would say. And we will also be getting you the strategic plan in time to really review it. So not the Monday or the Tuesday before the meeting.
Okay, you're on tape, Mark.
I know I'm on tape, but it's essential. See my friend Colette smiling about that because she wants the materials before Tuesday, which is when the select board meets, and she's absolutely right about that. I thought about it when I was sending out the assessment memo yesterday.
I'm at full power this morning, Mark. Full power.
Good, excellent. So it's a big meeting for Angie and Keith and maybe I think Imai, a few others perhaps. Eric Hove and I decided yesterday that we were going to call one more meeting of the advisory committee on the strategic plan. So I would expect that to happen between now and the 26th of February. I don't think he has a date quite yet, but we'll be working on it. And that's what I want you to be aware of.
Haber.
Just as a heads up, the invite that we have on my calendar calls this a Zoom meeting. So just beware. Maybe we ought to just send out a reminder that it is an in-person meeting, because otherwise I'd be tuning in by Zoom.
Yeah. No, we will send that out.
Thanks, Tabor. We'll update that calendar hold. Appreciate it.
Perfect. I was actually typing that in the chat after I called on you. So great. Any other questions or comments about the February meeting? We'll bring our appetite. And I look forward to seeing everyone in person at that meeting. Any other business not known at the, oh, Sam.
Sorry, I should have done this during the executive director's report, and I'm not deep in these issues, so it's a little bit of if I'm missing something. But I believe the Supreme Judicial Court just issued a ruling, and I'm wondering if Mark or Lizzie could speak briefly about how they feel about that on the, I understand on the 3A issues. I got something from MAPC a couple of days ago with your official response. I'm just curious if you have
it was I think it was a good decision, notwithstanding the perspectives of the good people of Needham. The SJC both supported the constitutionality of the statute and of the Attorney General's, and they also supported the Attorney General's right to enforce the statute. They did say, and this was not unexpected, that the guidelines needed to be changed into regulations and to go through the processes of the Administrative Procedures Act. We received notification from HLC yesterday that that process has kicked off with the issuance of regulations, which are emergency regulations, which means that they go into effect immediately while the public comment period is open for, I believe, 30 days. Not sure I'm right about that. 30 days. Yeah. And it indicated that, you know, everyone who's certified now is certified, and everyone who has gone to town meeting that or city council that holds, nobody is going to have to come back and start again after the new regs go into effect, which they are now in effect, at least temporarily. And all of that is to the good. I think it is important to note, despite the situation in Milton, in Needham, and in a few other places, the vast majority of the communities in the MBTA district are complying with the statute. And that is sometimes lost in the press reports. And we are working with many of those that are complying. We are also working with some of them that are not complying to try and get them to comply, but that's a little harder.
Thanks. I just was curious. Thanks a lot.
Mo?
Just so everybody knows, I am almost certain that Needham will be in full compliance. I think moving the deadline helped us because we have to go to town meeting again. If we had had an open town meeting, there wouldn't have been a referendum. But it passed overwhelmingly through town meeting, but we were subject to a very bad campaign on the part of the opponents, but we have enough time to fix it and will.
Good. That's wonderful. That's good news. Okay.
All right. Great.
Just had one other item of business for folks to be aware of. We are approaching the legislative filing deadline. The government affairs team is incredibly hard at work on all of the pieces of legislation that you gave us room to pursue and to file this legislative session, and getting sponsors for those. Folks might be reaching out. There's, you know, as we're entering the co-sponsorship push, it's always great to have more names added to legislation. We love to ask for your help in getting your legislators to sign on to legislation, and the team will have a whole bunch of resources that they'll be pushing out during that co-sponsorship push, and we'd love your help with that. So just wanted to put that out there for folks to be aware of that timing.
And I had one, are we on other business now, Erin?
Yes. Yes.
I have one item of other business. I had a conversation very late Saturday night with our friend and colleague Gina Martinez from her current perch in Melbourne, Australia. As some of you might know, Gina and her husband, who recently retired, are on a 2-year trip through Asia and South America. Gina loves the organization enough that she initially felt maybe she would just stay on, but we had a heart-to-heart, and she will be resigning her position on the council. Although I suspect whoever is governor in 2 years when she comes home may be subject to a campaign to reinsert her name. But that means that we have one additional gubernatorial vacancy. Leah and Lizzie and Emma are already working hard on gubernatorial recommendations to the governor for additional gubernatorial appointees to fill a relatively small number of positions that are currently vacant. So just to keep people updated on that. And there's no way we could fill, well, sorry, never mind that. We don't fill gubernatorial vacancies at council meetings. Anyway, the governor fills gubernatorial vacancies.
Thank you, Mark. Mo, your hand is still up. It's okay. We're giving a lot of grace to Needham.
I have a stiff arm and it won't come down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
There we go.
Is there anything else not known at the time of the posting of this agenda, Mark or Lizzie? I don't know where Lizzie is on my screen. I don't see you. Anyway, oh, I see you now. Okay. You moved at some point. Okay, so at this time, I am going to ask you, oh yes, and best wishes, Matt Walsh, who's here. Where are you? I see you now at HLC and with law school. We will miss you. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's not going to be a stranger.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll be calling, asking for something.
He will too.
Yeah. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda and, as well as a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Motion made by Tabor. Nope. Motion made by Tom Daniel. Second made by, was that John DePriest? Nope. Tabor. All right. I'm here. Okay. Motion made by Tom Daniel. Second made by Tabor to approve the consent agenda and to adjourn the meeting. Please come off mute. Here we go. Imai,
Aye.
Colette,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Keith.
Aye and bye.
Okay. Karen,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Tom D,
Aye.
John DePriest,
Aye.
John F,
Aye.
Tom G,
Aye.
Mo,
Aye.
Lagoon, Tabor,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Angie,
Aye.
Nina, Steve O,
Aye.
Vandana,
Abstain from the first two, yes for adjourn.
Claire,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Steve S,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
and Erin. Aye. So motion carries. Meeting is adjourned at 12:34. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you at the end of February in person.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Aye.